The grand archive of the R'lyeh species was a cathedral of knowledge. Its soaring halls shimmered with golden light, and walls were lined with crystalline panels that displayed the histories of 100 worlds. Scholars moved through the corridors like constellations in motion, each absorbed in the luminous records of their civilization. Yet among the greatest treasures of the archive was a single, small device, no larger than a human's forearm, which contained the earliest and most sacred chronicles of the R'lyeh, a text so complex that the oldest historians had never deciphered it. Cale, the lead historian, had spent centuries studying it. His elongated fingers traced the delicate patterns etched into its surface, glowing faintly with symbols that seemed to rearrange themselves whenever he wasn't looking directly at them. For generations, he had claimed, nobody can read this. It is beyond our comprehension. It is the legacy of the ancients, and only the deserving may glimpse its meaning. But now Cale's patience was wearing thin. Scholars came and went, their theories and devices discarded in frustration. The text remained an enigma, and the archivists whispered among themselves that perhaps some knowledge was never meant for their minds. Cale, tall and rigid, paced in the chamber, eyes narrowing over the delicate device. Each day the weight of the unsolved mystery pressed on him, a subtle humiliation for one who had dedicated his life to understanding the past. It was then that the humans arrived. They came not as conquerors or traders, but as delegates, scientists, and explorers, drawn to R'lyeh systems by the same curiosity that had led them to map the stars. Among them was one who, unlike the others, moved quietly, unobtrusively, yet with a focus that seemed almost magnetic. His name was Lucas. He was unassuming by R'lyeh standards, broad, solid, with hands capable of both work and thought, but there was a steadiness in his eyes, a clarity that made Cale uneasy. Cale had been reluctant to show Lucas the legendary device. "It is meaningless to you," he said. "Our symbols, our language, our history is impenetrable to outsiders." Lucas nodded politely, but his gaze remained fixed on the device, as though he could already see what Cale could not. "We like a challenge," Lucas said simply, reaching toward the device with care. His hands did not tremble. They hovered above the surface, and Cale felt a flicker of fear. "Do not touch it," Cale snapped, though there was a shadow of doubt behind his words. For centuries, none had been able to comprehend the device. To touch it and understand it, it seemed impossible. Lucas tilted his head, studying the text. The symbols shimmered under the ambient light, twisting and turning in subtle arcs. The R'lyeh historian had always assumed they were fixed, but now Lucas's gaze followed a pattern Cale had never noticed. "You've been looking at it the wrong way," Lucas said softly. "It's upside down." Cale's body stiffened. The words were absurd. How could it be that after centuries the entire foundation of study had been inverted, upside down? Cale repeated, his voice a mixture of skepticism and disbelief. Lucas smiled faintly, not arrogantly, but with the calm certainty of someone who had seen countless patterns before. "Yes, turn it this way." He gently rotated the device, turning it 90 degrees along its vertical axis. The change was subtle, almost imperceptible to Cale, but immediately, the symbols shifted in a way that made sense. A story began to emerge. A language formed in a pattern so elegant that Cale's mind struggled to keep pace. The hall was silent. Other scholars stopped their work, their eyes drawn to the strange unfolding of the device's secrets. What they saw next would shake the foundations of their knowledge. Lucas began to read aloud. At first it was slow, hesitant, as he sounded out the strange sequences of symbols. But as he continued, the rhythm became natural, fluid. It told of the ancients who had shaped the R'lyeh world, of their travels across galaxies, of a knowledge preserved for those who would see with clarity rather than tradition. Cale felt a strange exhilaration, a mixture of awe and envy. Every generation of R'lyeh historians had been humbled by this text, and yet here was a human, reading it effortlessly. The device seemed to respond to him, as though it had been waiting for someone who could see it not as a relic to be revered, but as a message to be understood. "Impossible," Cale whispered. Though he felt the lie in his own voice, the words flowed from Lucas's lips, forming images in Cale's mind that he had never imagined. The story spoke of alliances with unknown civilizations, battles lost and won across uncharted sectors, and a knowledge of physics and energy that rivaled their most advanced technology. That Lucas read. The other humans gathered around, their curiosity evident but tempered with respect. They did not interrupt, did not offer commentary. They seemed to understand that this moment was not theirs to claim. It belonged to the device, and to the being who could finally awaken it. Cale's pride battled with his astonishment. His mind had trained for centuries, yet he could only follow, not lead. He realized, painfully, that the R'lyeh obsession with history had blinded them to simplicity. They had assumed complexity must be approached with layers of ritual, of interpretation, of ceremonial thought. But Lucas had approached it as a problem, not a relic, and in doing so, he had unlocked what the R'lyeh could not. Hours passed unnoticed. The light of the archive shifted, casting long shadows across the crystalline walls. Lucas continued, never hurried, never uncertain. And as he did, Cale began to see the future unfurling before him. The text did not merely recount the past, it contained instructions, designs, and warnings, all encoded in a way meant to endure eons. It spoke of technologies that could heal worlds, stabilize dying suns, and even manipulate the very fabric of matter. The Relari scholars murmured among themselves, their awe tempered by confusion. How does he know this? One whispered. He cannot have studied for centuries. He sees differently, Kale said, and for the first time he acknowledged the human's gift without jealousy. He approaches knowledge without reverence, without the weight of expectation. That is why he succeeds. Lucas paused, holding the device, his expression thoughtful. There are sections that still need context, he said, but I can see the purpose. He turned to Kale. Your species preserved this perfectly, but you assumed only your methods could unlock it. Sometimes, all you need is a fresh perspective. Kale felt a pang of humility. We have valued time over insight, he admitted. We feared error more than ignorance. Fear is the enemy of understanding, Lucas said quietly. You created beauty and trapped it behind ritual. Knowledge is meant to be used, not worshipped. By the time the sun of the Relari system began to rise across the horizon, the device had revealed its secrets more fully than anyone had dreamed possible. The humans had not come to conquer or to claim, but to observe and assist. In doing so, they had reminded the Relari of what they had forgotten, that knowledge, no matter how sacred, exists to illuminate, not to intimidate. Kale looked at Lucas with a newfound respect. You are not like other humans I have encountered, he said. You carry no pride in what you know, yet you wield it with precision. Lucas shrugged modestly. I only see what is in front of me. That is all any of us can do. The scholars began to record the revelations, copying designs, transcribing the newfound understanding of energy manipulation and stellar travel. For the first time in centuries, the Grand Archive felt alive. It was no longer a place of silent awe, but a forge of creation, ready to guide the Relari into a new era. And Kale, once the most revered historian in the galaxy, found himself humbled. He had dedicated his life to understanding the past, yet it took a human, an outsider, to reveal that understanding was not merely about accumulation, but about perspective, clarity, and courage. In the following weeks, the Relari began collaborations with the humans. They built devices to harness energy from distant stars, systems to repair planets damaged by time, and methods of communication that spanned light. The device, once thought inscrutable, became the cornerstone of a new age. But Kale never forgot that moment, standing in the golden halls of the Grand Archive, watching a human read what centuries of his people could not. It was a lesson in humility, in curiosity, and in the extraordinary power of fresh eyes. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the crystalline towers, Kale asked Lucas a question he had not dared to voice before. Why? Why could you read it? Lucas smiled, the same calm certainty in his gaze. Because I didn't assume I had to. Sometimes, the answer is simpler than you think. Sometimes, you just have to turn it the right way. Kale chuckled softly, the sound echoing through the archive. Turn it the right way, he repeated. I will remember that. And in that quiet moment, the Relari historian understood the true lesson of the device, not the words themselves, not the knowledge, but the insight that the universe often waits for someone brave enough to look differently, to challenge assumptions, and to see what has always been there. Lucas, the unassuming human, had changed the course of an entire civilization without lifting a weapon, without seizing power, and without demanding recognition. He had simply seen the truth where others had seen mystery, and for that, the Relari would remember him forever.